Welcome to Teach Me to Dad. We're in the off season, between season 1 and 2, looking at the Bible together. Pardon the radio silence the last couple of weeks. Just been super crook as a family, so I've just been surviving. This week, we're going to look at Proverbs and some things that Proverbs teaches us about parenting. So I've been reading through Proverbs the last few weeks, making notes of the things that come up that are particularly addressed to parents and about raising kids. So keen to look at that. A quick reminder, there's a GoFundMe page, link in the description, just to get the word out there to this, particularly to dads who may not have a network of other dads around them that can encourage them in how they're trying to raise their kids as Christians. So thanks to you who've been already jumped on that. Anyway, flagging that for you. But so Proverbs, right? So Proverbs is a book for parenting. The whole thing's kind of framed as a parent talking to their child. It's like all written in like my son language. My son, listen to my words. And so the whole thing, in a sense, is good advice, good parenting advice for all of life. It's almost the things we could teach our kids to make them wise. A big thing about Proverbs, it's about learning wisdom. And so the key framework for it is the fear of God is the first step of wisdom. And so seeing our place in God's world, that holding him as highest, as reverent, as fearing him, his place in the world. Like with I've been thinking about this as parenting, right? It's the first thing we need to do as parents is recognize God and listen very fearfully with reverence and awe to God and what he says about parenting. So his word is the place we go and we come to it humbly, ready to accept anything he says. And so our kids are in his hands. What has he got to say to us? That's kind of step one for wisdom that primes us to hear his words, take them seriously. So there's a couple of things that come up, some repeated ideas, particularly when it speaks on the issue of parenting explicitly in Proverbs. And I've kind of see two categories that I break it into to look at the moment. The first is the kind of key verse for parenting. It's Proverbs 22:6. Proverbs 22:6. Train up a child in the way he should go, and even when he is old, he will not depart from it. So it's training them in the way they should go. That's what it calls us to do. And it wants us to set the way that our kids should live. And if we set them up well as a kid, it'll set them up for when they're old, which means that these particular years when we're training our kids, when they're under our influence, are huge years of influence. So it's a huge years of influence. We have a huge role of influence. And so we want to train them in the way they should go in these times that we've got them. So that's the first big premise, right? The first thing that comes up in Proverbs. There's a connection between our training them in their little years and them in their old age. I've been thinking about that lots lately with my kids. My kids in ages 0 to 5, and realizing that these years now and the years ahead, there's a short window of big influence. That's these words, training them in the way they should go. Those years are 0 to 10, 0 to 20. It's a short window as far as their life goes and my life goes. So that's very big. The other types of verses that come up in Proverbs are about discipline. Discipline comes up a bunch of times. And so God really wants us to think well about discipline as a parent. And so, a couple of verses that come up in discipline. There's the classic one, Proverbs 13, verse 24. Whoever spares the rod hates his son, but he who loves him is diligent to discipline him. Now, in their context, the rod seems, I think, pretty clearly to be some kind of whacking stick. Some kind of little stick that they whack them with. Not quite sure exactly how that played out in that culture, but it seems to be the concept. And the idea being that it's painful, that there's something, why would I spare the rod? Because I don't want to hurt my kid. But if you spare them, it's like you hate them. But if you love them, you will discipline them. It's this idea of, it's funny. Like, discipline always makes people feel uncomfortable because it's inevitably hurting a child. And you'd want to say, never hurt a child. But it's actually not right. And so God's kind of showing the reverse instinct of this, that we need wisdom and a long-term view to realize that controlled, diligent discipline, kind of controlled, purposeful hurting of a child, you could say, is loving them and isn't hating them. It's actually right. Now, you could see how some would take that as, justification to hurt a child, which is why we would cringe at it. But the Bible's very clear. It's the momentary pain is a teacher that directs a child in things that they should do and shouldn't do. So, this is the way that God operates. Hebrews 12 talks about enduring hardship as discipline from God. This is Him loving us, treating us as sons. It's painful for a time, but it's for our long-term good. And so, we need to have space for the idea of causing our child pain for their long-term development. Now, what does that look like? I don't know how much there's a question. Is the Bible affirming physical pain? Is it endorsing that? Is it demanding that? I've tried to read a lot of stuff on it this week, and I see things go both ways. Some people say this is the Bible talking about spanking, which it's not. Well, it's talking about a rod, not spanking, so it's not directly that, but that's where they're going to for that. But there's at least the principle of you need to cause your child pain in discipline to have a long-term impact of loving them for their good. And so this idea comes up a bunch through Proverbs. So Proverbs 29 has similar ideas. The rod and reproof give wisdom, but a child left to himself brings shame to his mother. Or again, another verse in that chapter. Discipline your son and he'll give you rest. He'll give you delight to your heart. By mere words, a servant isn't disciplined, though he understands he won't respond. There you go. Those are the big things in Proverbs. So I'm keen to keep pondering that one. How does discipline best look? How do you make a kid wise? I'm keen to push into how that looks, but there's a clear vision for us dads that we want to set the direction for our kids' lives while they're young, set the values, set a way for them to live, and help them by disciplining them. Don't let them choose their own path. I think this is something that our society heaps differs from the Bible on, and I think is off on it. I think we're a society that wants to let our kids choose their own path. I think we want to, well, we probably don't want to, but we probably are developing a lot of entitled kids that we're protecting them too much in their little years and not thinking about their older years, what kind of character they will be developing. And so there's a vision for this one, dads, and it starts with the fear of the Lord, the beginning of wisdom. Let's be wise dads as we do this. There you go. There's Proverbs. There's some thoughts. I've been finding it helpful. Hope it's been good.